The title Men We Reaped comes from a Harriet Tubman quote, which opens the book. Revisit the quote and discuss its relevance to Ward's memoir. How does the title convey themes of loss, inequality, and community in the book? So first of all, Harriet Tubman's quote is, "We saw the lightning, and that was the guns. Then we heard the thunder, and that was the big guns. And then we heard the rain falling, and then that was the blood falling. And when we came to get the crops, it was dead, men that we reaped."
Could you not?
In my opinion, I think the quote has relevance to the memoir because it says, in her life, she loses people, one thing after another, and how they say in the quote, we saw the lightning, and that was the guns, and then they heard the thunder, and then the rain, and then when all the people, at the end of the day, everyone that she knew was, just gone. That's why she called it the men we reaped, and, based off this quote, because everything that she knew, everyone was just, missing in her life.
I believe that the quote has relevance to the memoir because it illustrates how black people dealt with systematic oppression and slavery, and I think that it's supposed to juxtapose how black people deal with systematic oppression in modern times today. I believe that Harriet Tubman quotes illustrates black people running away from those negative forces that systematic oppression brings. However, this path to freedom requires the sacrifice of some lives, and those lives that were sacrificed were unfortunately the men that were lost on the quest to freedom, whether that be the slaves that Harriet Tubman was helping, or, as we see now, the men that Jesmyn Ward felt a close connection to in her life.
Yeah, and it talks about a storm and how probably she was waiting for the storm to pass as all of these people kept dying around her, but it never did, and at the end she saw all the destruction that it caused.
The word reaped in the title kind of contradicts the book because, for example, Joshua's death, when he died, the drunk man who crashed into his car was supposed to give Jesmyn Ward's mom a lot of money. However, he didn't, and he ended up going to jail for 3.5 years, even though his sentence was 5. Yeah. And Jesmyn points out that her brother's life was worth 5 years in prison, and it didn't even last that long.
In my opinion, I think the title relates to the book because, the first definition of reaps is harvesting crops, multiple. So a bunch of people died in, a short period of time, and it relates, them to crops.
Number 2 says, the memoir chronicles 5 deaths: Roger, Demon, CJ, Ronald, and Joshua. What do these 5 tragedies have in common? What are the differences among them? What do these deaths say about the experience of black masculinity today? Well, their deaths all resulted in tragic ones. They were all horrible. Roger died of overdose, which led to his heart attack. Demon was shot. CJ was in a car crash, as well as Joshua, and Ronald shot himself.
So each of the boys turned men, they all tried to live on their own, which kind of contributed to their masculinity, but unfortunately that kind of led to their deaths, which is kind of how the masculinity part. Even with black men today, we're kind of expected to fail. So this book kind of proved that even if you're trying to do right, you can still fall victim to the same deaths as a delinquent might fall victim to. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like a...
Yeah?
Oh, it's kind of like how it's a stereotype. Even, you're, it's like they expected them to die, even though their lives didn't have, anything to do, with that. As black men in the South, you were just expected to do wrong, even if your life was just full of all good and no this evil just had to take you away. Either way, you just got proved to be the opposite of what you truly are in the end.
They're continuing this stereotype, but unwillingly because of factors that they have no control over.
Even the one guy who was shot, I think he was the second one, and he was trying to do good because he was trying to testify in court for the other person, and he was trying to be a good person. He was trying to help the system, but even then, just trying to do the right thing, it ended up killing him anyway.
Number 10 says, discuss the influence of Ward's father upon the author and her siblings. How is their father a positive as well as a negative role model for his children?
She explains that when she was growing up, she initially thought that she learned everything from her dad, but when she was growing up and when she got older, she realized that she learned all the lessons from her mom. when her dad left the first time, when her mom kicked her dad out for the first time, all of her and her siblings' grades all started to drop, and they all became really depressed. And there's this one part of the book when she locks herself in the bathroom because that's the only place that she can have alone time, and she's staring at herself in the mirror, and she hates herself, and she hates the fact that she looks the least like her father, so she doesn't feel like she has anything from him, like a connection, and he didn't leave her anything because she looks the least like him. And when he comes back for like that really short period of time, everyone, like not the mother, but the kids are like a lot happier because they think that their dad's gonna stay, and it's gonna bring back this family bond because black men in the South and everything, like they always left the families, and everyone had like a broken family, so that they thought that their dad coming back for the second time would bring their family back together, even though he was only there for a short amount of time.
Discuss the gender roles that men and women play in Ward's family and community. What are some of the freedoms and risks of being a black man in Mississippi? What are the unique challenges of being a girl, a woman, a wife, and a mother in this community? How do the men and women in Ward's life fight and succumb to these gender roles?
All right, so I think things were really different for men and women. The men kind of got to explore more of their ambitions, whereas the women were the hard workers and like the caretakers, and they raised the kids. So especially for Ward's family, like her mom has been raising kids since she was a kid because like she had to help her mom out when her father left. And her and her husband kind of swore that they would never make their kids grow up in a one-parent household, but it didn't really work out like that. And so Ward's mom kind of had to be the disciplinary, and she didn't really get to have much of a relationship, like an emotional relationship with her kids, whereas the dad did because he didn't do much of the disciplining. He just got to have fun and go and cheat on her while the mom, like, did all the cooking and cleaning and making sure the kids stayed out of trouble and got an education.
Kind of going off of like what Jenna was just saying, how like the dad, like he got to just go out and like cheat on like the mom, and like as she was saying, like the mom stayed home and like she cooked and she cleaned and she actually did what she was supposed to do as a mother, but yet they still like gave the dad more respect than they did to their mom because he was like the more like fun loving, like, you know, like he wasn't really serious about with them, and like he just let them do whatever. But in the end, like the gender roles were like, it was like different because the dad's usually supposed to be like the one that like is like a hard worker and like, you know, like the stern one, and then like, but it's switched in that way where the sense where like the mom is like the stern, like hardworking, like she stays home, takes care of them, and that in that type of sense. I don't know.
That's typically, I don't know, what Ward was saying in the book, like that's how it was with a lot of black families because the dad was never around, which is why they thought it was pretty interesting that I think it was Damon was the only one who came from a two-parent household, but he still kind of had the future that
they all,
black
like,
men
in the end,
have.
all had the same ending, even though their paths there were different.
And the moms had to make a lot more sacrifices because in the one part of the book when after the dad leaves, all the kids got really depressed and their grades started dropping, and the one man who Jasmine's mother works for, he offered to pay private schooling for Jasmine, and she had to make that sacrifice because she knew that she wasn't doing well in school, so she wanted her to have a good education, but she knew that if he was paying for her schooling, she would be stuck at that job for years and years and years because I think it was like 6 years because she owed him everything, and the dad never made sacrifices for the kids and stuff like that. He could just come and go like whenever he really pleased.
Yeah, and like the kids still in the end liked him more, but like even though she did everything.
Yeah, they didn't really realize that until they got older because like kids just like the fun, loving parent.
It really is. They don't see how much you sacrifice for them. They just see like who's there and who's like, you know.
Yeah, but when they have like a closer look at it, it's like my mom did everything for me, and I still gave my dad more respect than her. But now like once they get older, they realize like my mom was a strong woman, and like she was the one that helped me through life, not him. He just kept living.
Didn't she like not have a credit score because everything was under the father's name?
Yeah.
So when he left, she had like she couldn't do anything with money because she had her credit score was just like gone, didn't even exist.
The men still had the power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even after he left.
My entire community suffered from a lack of trust, Ward writes. 169. Why do members of a community distrust society at large as well as one another? What are the consequences of this epidemic of distrust in Ward's community?
I think in the community that Ward lives in, people are so focused on trying to survive because they've seen so many people who are close to them die young and violently. They're more concerned with their own safety and looking out for themselves, and they don't really consider if their actions are going to affect others. So they're really looking out for the people that they care about rather than the community at large. So it might not be distrust. It might be more of like a protective nature that these people have just developed over time living in this situation.
Watching all the negative things happen, kind of.
So seeing that the overall power is kind of like bringing them down and really destroying the community, it's kind of hard for the community to come together and fight against that overall power when they themselves are killing each other within the community. It's kind of hard to trust and work together with someone when you know that that same person could possibly shoot you the next day. So that's probably why their community is falling apart, because they don't have that trust and they can't fight for or with each other.
I believe members of Ward's community distrust one another and society at large because society is against them. The entire system is set up for them to fail. As you can see in Ward's case, they come from a poor working class family, and the ability for them to climb the socioeconomic ladder isn't presented because of the education they're receiving. Her mom tries her best to have Ward receive that quality education, but even still she can't do the same for the rest of her kids. I feel like they distrust one another because they're in a position where people are desperate to provide a life for their family. So in turn, they may have to take from others, and everyone is on their guard to make sure that they're not being the one whose resources are stolen from. Some of the consequences that many of the people in Ward's community face from this distrust is the fact that there's no sense of unity within the people. For instance, when Raj was telling her cousins to turn the music down because he didn't want any altercations within the law enforcement in the area, they completely disregarded what he was trying to say. And I think that in part has something to do with distrust in the community because they don't have that same mindset as in we're all just trying to look out for each other. When Raj was trying to look out for them, they just thought, I don't care about what he's trying to say. I just want to party and live my life. Although Ward confronted overt racism at school every day, Joshua faced a different kind of racism, systematic kind. Compare these two siblings' experiences of discrimination during their school years. What survival mechanisms did each child develop in order to ward off these types of racism? Joshua faced discrimination as in he was a child who didn't do good in school. However, because every black kid didn't do good in school, no help was thought to be needed, because they believe it's something that happened to everyone. This revolves around the dynamics of systematic racism and black people not receiving the help that they need. Although, Ward faced a racism in a way where she was provided the opportunities for success, but the obstacles she faced were presented by the blatant discrimination and prejudice of her peers and classmates. Joshua's survival mechanism involved handling situations calmly, while Ward thought to ignore it and keep her cool as she endured the discrimination and prejudice of her peers.
The title Men We Reaped comes from a Harriet Tubman quote, which opens the book. Revisit the quote and discuss its relevance to Ward's memoir. How does the title convey themes of loss, inequality, and community in the book? So first of all, Harriet Tubman's quote is, "We saw the lightning, and that was the guns. Then we heard the thunder, and that was the big guns. And then we heard the rain falling, and then that was the blood falling. And when we